Just a reminder about what this week looks like schedule-wise for English and math. Of course, it is Thursday, so at this point, the only day we're going to have left is Friday. Friday, your English session is going to be from 11 to 12, and then we are going to meet for math one last time from 5 to 6, and we're going to do a review SAT module. And then we'll have some time afterwards to talk about questions from that, as well as do some other general review. So moving on to our topics for today. Like I said, we're going to be covering advanced math. And what the College Board says what the College Board means when they say advanced math, is they're talking about equivalent expressions, nonlinear equations in variables, systems of equations with two variables, and then nonlinear functions. So today we're just going to be going over really this last one, nonlinear functions, which is primarily going to be quadratics on this exam. Yeah, so quadratics, the steps to solve a quadratic, you guys are going to have to factor. And like I said at the beginning of the week, just as a reminder, you guys are going to have Desmos to use on this exam. But we're just going to go through all these practice problems and make sure everybody gets a refresher on the longhand algebraic way to solve all these types of problems. So starting off with this question, they want us to factor x squared plus 9x minus 10. And so when I see a factoring question, there are many different ways to go about factoring, but the way that I like to do it is I like to look at, I'm going to look at A and then C. And because A is 1, we can kind of disregard that. But then looking at C, C is negative 10. So to factor, you're going to ask yourself, what are the factors of negative 10 that add up to positive 9? So multiply to negative 10, and then they have to add up to positive 9. And then you just can go through and list all of the factors of negative 10. So it will be negative 1 and 10. And then on the flip side, it could be 1, negative 10. And then it's going to be negative 2 and 5, and then 2 and negative 5. And then we're just going to see which of these would add up to positive 9. So negative 1 plus 10 is going to be 9. So that is correct. But then just looking at these, if you write down one of these as your first option, negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9. So this is close, but the sign is opposite. So we know it's not going to be these two factors. Negative 2 plus 5 is going to be positive 3, which is not negative 10. So it can't be those. And then on the flip side, negative 2 plus negative 5 is negative 3. So it also can't be those factors. So looking at this, we see that negative 1 and negative 10 are the only two factors that add up to 9. So we can write the solution as x minus 1 times x plus 10. So that means that x is going to be 1 and negative 10. All right, I'm going to take a look at the group chat. Again, if you guys haven't been here for our other sessions, feel free to put questions if you have any at any point in this lecture in the chat. And then if you are doing these alongside me and you get an answer, feel free to put that answer in the chat. And yeah, so again, just an easy way to factor. A different method is the grouping method. So you write this out as, so it's going to be you writing this equation out as x squared plus some coefficient of x plus some other coefficient of x minus 10. And then remember whatever these coefficients for x are, you're gonna, once you divide this x out of this first group, you're gonna get the same grouping in both of those. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. This is just as a refresher. And then just a couple things to remember when you do see these advanced math questions on the exam, is that there are some special cases. So if you see an equation that is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, that this is going to factor out to a plus b squared. And then the square of a difference, so similar to this equation, to this first square of the sum, but instead of plus 2ab, it's going to be minus 2ab, and that's just going to make this factoring negative, or negative b. And then the difference of squares, when you have a squared minus b squared, is going to be a plus b times a minus b. And again, this isn't something that's you're going to get on that geometry cheat sheet, unfortunately. So this is just going to be things that you can remember, but don't worry if you don't, because these can still be factored the long way, and you should get to the same answer. It will just be a shortcut and a time saver if you do remember these special cases. All right, and then, so this is another example, and in this example, we can use the same methods that I just talked about, but unlike the first practice problem, A is not 1. A is going to be 6. So we do have to do this A times C, and that gets us negative 18. So we have to find these factors that multiply to negative 18, but then add up to negative 7. And go through, you can list these all out. So it'll be 1 and 18, or negative 1 and 18, and then 1 and negative 18. And then you can also do negative 2 and positive 9, 2 and negative 9. And it's going to be negative 3 and 6, 3 and 6, negative 6, apologies. And then 18, and 4 doesn't, and 5, and then you come back to 6. So these are going to be all the groupings of the factors, all the factor options. And then we just go through and we see which of these adds up to negative 7. So this is going to be negative 1 plus 18 is going to be 17, not 7. So it's not this. And then this is going to be negative 17. So we also know it's not these factors. Looking at negative 3, 6, this is going to add up to 3, and then this is going to add up to negative 3. So we also know that it's not going to be these 3 and 6. And then looking at this middle one, so negative 2 plus 9 is going to be positive 7. And then 2 plus negative 9 is going to be negative 7. So looking at this is the only factor grouping that adds up to negative 7. So we can write these out as, it's going to look like, okay, so 6x squared minus 9x plus 2x minus 3. Right, and then just dividing these out. So for this, we can divide this by 3x. That's a common factor, so this is going to get us 3x times 2x minus 3, which we see is this factor over here. There's no other, this is simplified. There's no other way to divide 2x minus 3. Right, and then so these are going to be the factors. It's going to be, yes, so these are going to be the factors. And then, of course, to get, right, and then when they factor, this is going, they're not asking for the solutions, so we don't have to set it equal to 0 and solve or anything. Some of these questions will ask you to set it equal to 0 and solve. Yes, Karen. Yep. Yes. So the solutions are going to be 3/2 and -1/3. But yes. Okay. So, right, and then factored out, this is going to be written as 3x plus 1 times 2x minus 3, right? Because there's just this one coefficient in front of the 2x minus 3. And then if they're asking you to find the roots, you would set each of these equal to 0 and then solve, but they're just asking us to factor. So this is our last step that we need. We don't have to go any further. I don't see any questions about this, so I'm going to go ahead and keep going. All right, looking at this next one. So they say they're asking us which of the following is equivalent to this expression of 3x squared plus 21x plus 18. And then it's a multiple choice question, so they give us 4 options, and then we can just use this to guide our answers. Looking at this, so looking at this equation that they give us, and then these options, I'm going to see how 3 divides out of this, and then what that looks like after. So if we divide out the common factor of 3, it's going to give us 3 times x squared plus 7x plus 6. Right, but then looking at this, and looking at the answer choices, there aren't any answer choices where they keep this polynomial before factoring it. So they're also asking us to factor this polynomial after we divide out that 3. And then, so we could use the methods that we've been talking about. And I have been going through and writing all of them down like this. So it has to multiply to 6 and add up to 7. You are welcome to write this out, obviously, if you feel like you need to, or if you have 2 terms that have a lot of factoring options. But the fastest way to do it is just going to be in your head. So I know that the only 2 factors of 6 that add up to 7 are going to be 6 and 1. So looking at that, and they both have to be either positive or they both have to be positive because they add up to positive 7 instead of negative 7. So I don't even have to write this out or anything. I can just look at these answer choices. There's only one answer choice with the factors of 1 and 6. So I know that the answer to this question is going to be A. Look at the chat, see what people said. A, yes. You put A in the chat. Good job, guys. You are correct. And then if you are ever in doubt, like I said, you're going to have Desmos on the exam. So the way to check this would be to plug in the equation that they give you in this question, and then plug in whichever answer choice you need to check, and you should get the same quadratic function. All right, so now that we've done a little bit of factoring, we'll move on to operations polynomials. So these are going to be a little bit more advanced. They're going to ask you to do a few more steps to solve it. So in this example, they give us this equation, and they say the equation above is true for all of x, where a, b, and c are constants, and they ask what is the value of b. So for this case, essentially what they're asking you to do is just combine these like terms to get this polynomial format that we see to the right of the equal sign. So 9x squared minus 6x squared is going to be 3x squared. Positive 5x minus negative 4 is going to be 9x. And then negative 1 minus 0 is just negative 1. So this format matches this equation to the right of the equal sign, and they're asking for b, and we know that b is this constant or this coefficient in attached to this middle term of x, so we know that the value of b is 9. On the test, of course, you're welcome to do it out like I just did, going through all of the terms and adding them all up so you get this whole equation. But if they're only asking for one value, my advice would be to just simplify this term. So instead of doing the 9x squared minus 6x, just go right to the 5x squared plus or minus negative 4x to get that 9x and get that answer of b. All right. So moving on to some isolating quantities practice. Again, something else that you might need to know. So if they give us this equation, b equals pi r squared h, and then they ask which of the following correctly expresses r. So essentially what they're asking you to do is isolate r. And to do that, so we see that r is already isolated in all of these answer choices. What we're going to do is we're just going to move everything to the other side of the equation. So we first get r squared is equal to v divided by pi h. And then we have to take the square root of both sides to get rid of that power attached to the r. So we're going to also take the square root of this side. And then we're going to get r is equal to the square root of v over pi h. And then when we're looking at the answer choices, we look and see which one matches. And we see that D is going to be the correct option. Look at what people said in the chat. Perfect. All right. So I'm not seeing any answers, but that's okay. And then, like I said, this one should be pretty fast and easy because they aren't asking you to solve or find any values, just asking you to move these variables around. I'm going to go ahead and move on because I don't see any questions. All right, and then the big one in this advanced math quadratic section is going to be solving the quadratic equations. So for this practice problem, they give us an equation and they say, what are the solutions to the equation above? So this is a little bit different from the first few practice problems that we did because they're asking us to find the solution. They're not just asking us to factor. So we do have to, we still do have to factor for these questions, but then we have to do that extra step of setting the factors equal to 0 and then solving. So looking at this, there's no value of a. It's just, well, there's a is just 1, so we can disregard that. So we have negative 56, and then we have b is positive 1. So we know that the factors are going to have to add, they're going to have to multiply to negative 56 and add up to positive 1. And then again, you can go ahead and write all these out. It might be tempting to, especially because 56 is on the larger side. But just looking at this, I know that two factors of 56 are going to be 7 and 8. And then with -7 and +8, those would add up to +1. So I'm going to rewrite this in the factored form. So -7. And then I'm going to set each of these equal to 0, and I'm going to solve. So x plus 8, when you set that equal to 0, x is going to be equal to -8. And then x minus 7 equal to 0 is going to be +7. So looking at our answer choices, the answer for this is going to be B. Again, you can do this out the long way, this arithmetic way, but this is also a question where you can take this equation that they give you, and then you can plug it into Desmos, and you can see which of these answer choices aligns with the root on Desmos. Yep, remember that it's so C is an easy answer to get tripped up on and think that that's correct, because those are the factors. But remember that after you find the factors, you have to set them equal to 0, which flips the sign. All right, I'm going to go ahead to the next problem. Yes, so another thing that they might ask you when they ask you about solving these quadratic equations is they might ask you to find the sum or product of solutions. And a shortcut way to find either the sum or the product is going to be, for the sum, it's going to be -b divided by a, and then or c divided by a to find when they ask you about the product of solutions. And then remember that this is the quadratic formula, and then this is just another way to find those solutions for x. And again, this isn't going to be something that they give you. This is just going to be something that you have to remember. Then, similar to systems of equations, there are different solutions. There are three types of three numbers of solutions that a quadratic can have. And the way that you can find this kind of faster than trying to factor it and then solving is using the discriminant. So the discriminant is going to be this d right here, and it's going to be equal to b squared minus 4ac. And where we get that from is the quadratic formula. So it's going to be what's under this square root, b squared minus 4ac. And then when you take this and you are solving and plugging in the values that you have, if whatever value you find for this is greater than 0, then the quadratic function is going to have two unique real solutions. If it is exactly equal to 0, then the equation has one real solution. And then if the value that you get after solving the discriminant is less than 0, then the equation is going to have no real solutions, right? Because looking at this, if we have, if this value inside the square root is negative, from algebra 2 / pre-calculus, we know that a negative square root is going to be an imaginary number, so it's not going to be a real solution.
Will the quadratic formula be on our cheat sheet?
No, it will not, I don't believe. No, so it is just going to be something that you have to remember. As well as this won't be on your cheat sheet, but it will be helpful. So this is an example of a problem where using this discriminant and number to find the number of solutions is going to be helpful for you guys. So they give you an equation. They say if ax squared plus 8x plus 1 is equal to 0, for what value of a does the equation have exactly one real solution? So so the discriminant we know is going to be b squared minus 4ac. And then to have exactly one real solution, this has to be equal to 0. And then they give us A and they give us B and they give us C, sorry. So we're going to plug those in. So it's going to be 8 squared minus 4A times 1 is equal to 0. And then we can solve. So 8 squared is going to be 64 minus 4A is equal to 0. And then we're going to subtract 64 from both sides to get negative 4A is equal to negative 64. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 4 to get A is equal to negative.
Positive.
Right, thank you. Yes, good catch. It is going to be positive. Let me just do this out. 64 divided by 4, positive 16. Right, so this is going to be where that discriminant knowledge comes in handy. Yes, see, 16. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions on this, so go ahead and move on. Does anybody have any questions about things that we've covered up to this point? I know the quadratic formula and solving and factoring can be a little bit intimidating sometimes. All right, I'm not seeing anything. Again, why would it be positive? Because when you subtract, right, so the discriminant is going to be, you get negative 4ac. It's 64 minus 4ac is equal to 0. And then c is 1. So they cancel that out. And then when you subtract 64 from both sides, you get negative 4a is equal to negative 64. And a negative divided by a negative is positive. Okay, good question. All right. So that is just about it as far as quadratics and solving those go. We're going to go ahead and do some practice problems because we still have quite a bit of time, which is a good thing. So the given equation relates the numbers j, k, and m. Which equation correctly expresses k in terms of j and m? So again, this one is pretty easy. It's just going to be about moving around these terms so that you isolate k, isolate the variable that they are looking for, which is k. So this is what they're looking for. So the first step is going to be to subtract the j from both sides. So it's going to get 5k is equal to m minus 14j. And then you still have to isolate that k, get that coefficient to be 1. So we're just going to divide both sides by 5. Oops. To get k is equal to m minus 14j all over 5. And then looking at these answers, it is going to be answer A, and then I'm going to check the chat to see what folks are saying because I see some answers. All right, good job, guys. Everybody who said A, you are correct. All right, again, pretty fast, pretty easy. All right, this one is a little bit more lengthy. So they're asking us to find the sum of the solutions to the given equation. So the first thing we want to do, remember to solve any quadratic equation, we want to get it, sorry, we want to get one side of this equation to be 0. right? We want to set all these variable terms equal to 0. So to do that, what we're going to do is we pick a side and isolate. We pick a side to move everything to, and actually, you know what first I am going to do is I'm gonna multiply everything out so that we get those quadratic terms. So x times x is x squared plus x minus 56 is equal to 4x squared minus 28x. And that looks a little bit nicer. That involves less division of these factored terms. But I'm just gonna isolate everything. And I think the way I want to do it is I'm going to move everything to the left. So I'm going to subtract 4x squared to get negative 3x squared. And then I'm going to add 28x to both sides to get 29x. And then minus 56 is equal to 0. And then looking at this constant and these coefficients, these are going to give us some pretty big, pretty difficult terms to factor. So this can be a little intimidating to look at. From here, you guys have two options. So you can take this equation that we have here and plug it into Desmos and find these solutions that way and then add them just by hand. A different way, remember this slide we looked at way back up here, is that when they ask for the sum of solutions, it's going to be negative b over 2a. Let me go ahead, or negative b over a, apologies. So just going back to this slide, this practice problem. Right. So if it's negative b over 2, or negative b over a, oh, messing that up. We have the b and the a, so we can just plug into this little handy shortcut, and that will give us a quick way to find the sum of these solutions without actually finding the solutions. So negative b is 29, so it's going to be negative 29 divided by negative 3. And then negative divided by negative is going to be a positive, so it's going to be 29 over 3. And yes, so this is going to be, so you can't divide 29 by 3. 29 is a prime number, but we can divide 27 by 3, which is going to leave us 2/3. So 27 divided by 3 is 9 and 2/3. So 9 and 2/3 is going to be the answer. There are lots of different ways that you can write your answer for these fractions on the exam. I believe you can keep it as 29/3. You can also, yes, you can also divide this out and write it out to 2 decimal places. Yes, so this is going to be our solutions. This is why these shortcuts are going to come in pretty handy for you guys, because it's going to help with questions where they ask about this, but the coefficients and the constant are on the messier side, on the harder side to factor and solve. All right. Our third practice, so they give us this equation, x squared minus 2x minus 9 is equal to 0. And they say one solution to the given equation can be written as 1 plus the square root of k, where k is a constant. And then they ask us, what is the value of k? So to find this, we are going to have to factor and solve. So looking at this, the factors need to add up to -9, or multiply -9 and add up to -2. And just eyeballing this, the factors of 9 are 1 and 9. In this case, it'd be -1 and 9, or 1 and -9. And then it's going to be 3 and 3, so it'd be -3 and 3. But just looking at these, none of these are going to add up to 2. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to factor and solve this. What we're going to have to do is use the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula, just to go back, is going to be this equation of -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Writing that down. Okay. And then looking back at this, so to solve, we just have to plug these a, b, and c into this equation. Apologies. All right, so we just have to plug in. So -b is actually going to be positive. It's actually going to be +2. So it's going to be 2 plus or minus. Oh, you wrote the plus or minus out. Plus or minus, so this b squared. So it's -2 squared minus 4 times 1 times -9 all over 2. Right, and then so this is going to be 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 36. Ooh, 2 positive. Apologies, I have a little bit of a cold going on. But going back to this, all divided by 2. And then simplifying this, so it's going to be 2 plus or minus the square root of 40 divided by 2. So, and then remember, this is all divided out. So, let's see if there are any answers. Okay, so, and then we're going to divide this 2, and let's see what people are saying. Could you have solved using complete the square? Yes, and if you want, I can go through and do that. Okay. Yes, so I'm hearing C in the chat. So remember, this is going to be 2, this is going to be 1, oh, okay. So this is going, when you divide 2 out, remember that there's a 1 attached to this square root term, so it's going to be 1 plus or 1 plus the square root of 40 divided by 2. Yes, and then looking at these answers, so we know it's not going to be. Oh, actually, I'm not going to eliminate 8 yet because, so looking at 40, you can't take a square root of. However, there are factors in 40 that have squares. So writing this out, it would be 4 times 10. which is going to simplify to 2 times the square root of 10. So looking at that, because square root of 40 over 2 isn't an answer. And remember, you can't divide 40 by 2 because the 40 has the square root attached. So you have to see if there are any factors in 40 that do have square roots, that do have even square roots, and take those. So actually, the answer is going to be B because, right, remember this 2 times the square root of 10 is still divided by 2, and these cancel out to get 1 plus the square root of 10, which would make K 10, and the answer B. Okay, and then let's see. Yeah, let's look and see. Well, yes, so you could use completing the square to do this, but you are still one of the solutions, solution the solution is going to be 1 plus or minus the square root of 10. So it would be on the messier side if you used the completing the square method. This quadratic formula is going to give you, this quadratic equation is going to give you that nice square root without you having to solve or worry about that. Okay. All right, another practice problem. In the given equation, C is a constant, and the equation has exactly one solution. And then they ask, what is the value of C? So remember when they talk about solutions, number of solutions for quadratic functions, it's going to be the discriminant. So it's going to be everything under the square root sign in the quadratic equation, which is b squared minus 4ac. And then when it's one solution, this has to be equal to 0. So it's going to be b squared minus 4ac is all equal to 0. And then we just plug in the values that they give us in this equation. And we're going to keep c because that's what they're asking us to find. So b is 30, so it's going to be 30 squared minus 4 times negative 9 times c is equal to 0. So it's going to be, oh my gosh, 30 squared is 900 plus 36c is equal to 0. Subtract that, so it's going to be 36c is equal to, I just want to make sure. Yes, 900. Okay. 36c is equal to negative 900. So before we even get to the math, we can eliminate a and b because they are not negative. So it's either going to be this 25 or this negative 25 or this negative 53. And then you just divide 900 by 36, which is negative 25. So the answer is C. Yes, to everybody who put C in the chat, congrats, you are right. Good job. All right, keeping it going. Just have a couple more questions to cover. So this one says the function of f is defined by f of x equals x minus 6 times x minus 2 times x plus 6. In the xy plane, the graph of y of g of x is the result of translating the graph of y equals f of x up 4 units. And then they ask, what is the value of g of 0? So my first instinct for this is they're talking about translating it in the xy plane, so on a graph. So I'm going to take this function and I'm going to go ahead and plug it into Desmos just to see what they say. An error message. Ah, yes, it doesn't like these fancy X's. Right, so, yes, so this is the function that we are going to get. And then they say that it is going to be translated up 4 units. So when we look at Desmos, that is going to be hmm, yes, I can go back to the last one. Do you have any questions about this problem or just want to see it again? Okay. Are you all set, Ash, or do you have any questions? Okay, perfect. So, again, going back to this, so looking at this graph, um, right, so this is the function, and they say that it is translated up 4 units. And then they say that the result is this new function, g of x, and then they ask you what the value of 0 is when you plug it into this new function. So let's take a look. First, we're going to find where 0 is on this function, and so it's going to be at 2 comma 0 is going to be where x, this is going to be where y equals 0. So when x equals 0, let's see where that intersects. That's going to be at 72, at 0, 72. And then if you translated that up 4 units, then it's going to be 76. And again, the easiest way to do this is probably just going to be looking and plotting on Desmos and looking and finding this. So we'll go ahead and talk about this last practice problem. So they say if u squared minus ut equals 6 and t squared minus ut equals -2, what is the value of 2 times u minus t squared? So, this is another difficult one. Okay, so they say that u squared minus ut is 6, and then this ut, this t minus ut is going to be -2. So, looking at this, I want to try to make this all one function. So I'm going to actually, or you know what? So let's make this a nice quadratic function that would be easier to solve or would look like something we would solve. So that means that this is going to be, we're just going to get everything on one side. So it's going to be u squared minus ut minus 6 is equal to 0. Then the second equation is going to be t squared minus ut minus 2 is going to be equal to 0. Um, but then, all right, so looking at this, we have two variables in the center. So you won't be able to do this on the exam, but going back, remember we have some special cases when we talk about factoring. So let's look and see if we have any. And we don't because we do have these constants. So we're going to go back to this equation and look at this. But because we don't have any solutions, we can't actually factor and solve any of these. So, hmm, again, this is going to be one of the advanced math questions, so it is going to be more of a puzzler for sure. All right. You know what? Okay. So if this method doesn't work, the next thing I'm going to try is isolating one of these variables in one of these equations and plugging or isolating both variables and then seeing if I can plug it in or find a solution that way. So looking at you, hmm, let's see.
Shouldn't the second equation be +2? That's probably why you messed up.
Oh, yes, it should. Um, thanks. But still, either way, this is not going to be easily solvable because we do have these two variables. So let's look at doing it this way. So u squared is going to be equal to ut. Okay, I'm going to do it this way because I want to isolate t in this. So let's do it this way. Okay, so negative ut. Let's do 6 minus u squared. And then all over negative u. Yeah, and then so once I have this for the value of t, even though it isn't a constant or numerical value, let's go ahead and see what happens if we plug this in for t, or I'll try to isolate u in this second equation too. So it'll be negative ut is equal to negative 2 minus t squared. Okay, 8. Okay. We have 8 in the chat. Put that over here. Okay. And then we're isolating u, so this is going to be divided by t to get negative t to get u is equal to negative 2 minus t squared over negative t. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually still divide out that negative. So it's going to be u is equal to 2 plus t squared over t. Hmm. All right, and then let's see how much time we have left. Okay. And looking at this, that still gives us two variables. Um, Karen, do you want to share how you did it? Because this
Uh,
is, sorry?
sure. So what I did was I distributed u minus t squared, and then I got u squared minus 2tu plus 2t squared. And
Mhm.
then I was able to see that u squared minus ut is equal to 6, and t squared minus ut equals -2. So then you end up, and then since it's 2u minus t squared, you just multiply that by 2 and you get 8.
2 minutes. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's much faster than the way that I was doing it. Thanks for sharing your explanation. Did everybody else hear that? I'm not seeing any questions about it in the chat, so that's good. Yes. So again, Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. Clearly, you have a handle on this type of question. But this is going to be something that you guys are going to want to practice more because even for me, it is on the more difficult side. Um, but so once you get, yes, that makes sense. Okay, so this is going to be the end of all the stuff that I have prepared for you guys. We only have a couple minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing my screen before we leave. Does anybody have any questions for me about anything that we've talked about either today or in access this slideshow? So I don't have you guys' emails, but actually what I will see, I will send a, I'll see if I can send these slide decks to, so we have one day of boot camp left. It's just tomorrow. But I'll see if I can, money interest. Yes, there will be questions like that on the SAT. Yes, so you will need to know exponential growth and decay, which is that interest formula. But yeah, so I will see if I can send these slideshows to the counselors at your school who we are coordinating and organizing this with. And then I'll see if they can send those to you guys. But yes, it is 12, so we are technically done. Thank you guys for coming. And I'll see hopefully all of you guys tomorrow for our practice module and practice and just review time. I'll hang around if anybody has any questions. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, feel free. But if you don't, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.